Hi everyone. Today I'm doing a video essay on the digital identity of singer-songwriter Chris Farren, or as he likes to call himself, a perfect human being. Today I will be talking about narcissism versus self-doubt and where those two kind of intersect to make someone who is very likable, and what are the dangers of being too self-doubting or being too narcissistic online. In order to talk about who Chris Farren truly is, we have to have a small background on him. Chris Farren has been active in the punk scene since 2007 and has been in many different bands and is now has his own side project as just Chris Farren. He has released multiple albums and two albums under the name Chris Farren. The reason I like to talk about Chris Farren is because of his digital identity. This is a picture that Chris Farren uses over and over online to represent himself. He manipulates this image. He replies to people with this image. It is a very basic headshot of him that he uses over and over and over again. And this is just one of the reasons why Chris Farren comes off originally as a narcissist. Why does he come off as a narcissist? Well, because he says that he does everything perfect. He uses this image to reply to people. He prints off merch with just him as the foreground. The good thing about this, though, is that this narcissism is obviously comical. It is very apparent that he doesn't actually feel this way about himself. He doesn't feel about himself as a perfect human, and we'll kind of get into that a little later. Now, this image is one of the more important tools that he uses to kind of influence his brand online and connect with people. This is the first time this image appeared on his Instagram back in 2016, and he gave out headshots to the first 200 people who pre-ordered his record, which that in and of itself is a very narcissistic thing. A few other things he uses to portray his narcissism online: he has a lot of merch that is simply of him. As you can see in the left side of this, he has a wall flag of that same exact headshot that we've been talking about before, and a pillow made of another picture of him. On the right, we can see another shirt that he sells, which is describing how this person saw a perfect set by Chris Farren, and all they got was this beautiful shirt. In addition to physical merch and just using an image to his liking, Chris Farren's social media presence is one for the books, honestly. He constantly tweets out his own name as content and talks about and flips branding techniques around to focus on him. He constantly uses the term hashtag Throwback Thursday to celebrate himself and to celebrate everything that he's done, even though half the time he's not throwing back to anything, he's just celebrating himself. One example that I like to show of this is him talking about a set that he had. He congratulates all the people that he played with at the set and all the people that put it together, in addition to doesn't want to forget his fans and all of the merch that they bought from him. Something about selling a lot of merch that really moves me is what he says in this tweet. The last thing that Chris Farren does to really cement his version of his narcissism is his live shows. Chris Farren will project his own face onto his face, as is seen on the right side, and after every single set, he will scream, "Another perfect set by Chris Farren," even whether or not he has messed up multiple times. Now, Why is Chris Farren likable is the question. If he's just this guy, this narcissistic guy who hates himself in the media, we've seen a lot of those before, and a lot of them are hard to like. One of them specifically being Kanye West. Kanye is probably one of the biggest narcissists in the entertainment industry right now. He constantly calls himself a god and says he's done nothing wrong. And this extent of narcissism really turns off fans that could be of Kanye. There are a lot of people who don't listen to Kanye just because of how narcissistic he comes off as. Which is why we were surprised when Kanye released his song called I Love Kanye. Bustle wrote a great piece about this, about talking about what his 1.5-minute song, where he rhymes Kanye with Kanye about 25 times, really means. And in the end, though, Kanye has brought all of this hatred on himself. Bustle talks about how this song was really him talking about the media, and how the media always hates him because they hate the bad mood Kanye, or the always rude Kanye. But all of this hatred is self-inflicted. Kanye brings this upon himself, and he doesn't have any really redeemable qualities other than he makes really good music. Chris Farren, on the other hand, when you look into his music and you look into his interactions with people online, has a lot of redeeming qualities. Another interesting thing that I thought of when I was thinking of narcissism in the media was Marshall McLuhan's book, Understanding Media. In the 4th chapter of this book, titled The Gadget Lover, Narcissus as Narcosis, McLuhan talks about, with the increase in technology, we as a society have increased our rates of narcissism. He doesn't talk about this, but this is something he alludes to. Now we have selfies, social media accounts. This is all about who we are and who we want to portray ourselves as. In this chapter, he has an amazing quote. He says, "Men at once become fascinated by any extension of themselves in any material other than themselves." Chris Farren is taking this to a new level. Chris Farren, most of the times, says that he is the perfect human, and taking the normal amount of narcissism that we've gained as a society with our increase of technology to another level, and capitalizing that as he does. Now, I keep talking about how Chris Farren has redeemable qualities, and how after a while you figure out that he's not truly narcissistic. And one of the things that really show that are his songs. A lot of his songs are very self-doubting. Just like this song, he says, "I just want to feel like a human being." Or in his song, "Until I Can See the Light," he says, "You can only fall so many times till you don't get up." Chris Farren, his songs are very self-reflective, and you can see that past this digital identity that he presents himself as, he's a very self-doubting person, and he has a lot of problems seeing himself through. As you can see, and this leaks into some of his digital presence, as you can see in this tweet. He says, "Never-ending battle in my mind. Desperately wanting people to like me versus realizing that some people just suck and are mean." Chris Farren may be a narcissist on the outside, but when you look past that, it is very apparent that he is just doing that for comedic relief, and he actually has a lot to work on. In addition to him having a lot to work on, the scene that he is a part of has a lot to work on too. The punk scene currently that he is a part of has a lot of problems with depression and self-doubt. It started out as a scene of outsiders and has grown into a real community. but that community is backed by a lot of people who struggle with depression and struggle with doubting themselves and doubting if they can do what they want to put their minds to. Being narcissistic in this community usually does not make you likable. When the community started, there were a few narcissistic people that were looked at as great, but now that it has blossomed into a community of trying to work on yourself and trying to be and get help with that depression, being narcissistic is something that usually isn't shown in this community. That's why the focus on community here is something extremely important. So, if narcissism doesn't fly in this punk community anymore, then we have the question of, why is Chris Farren so liked? And it's because of his intersection of self-doubt and narcissism. It's hard to have both of those in the same person, but Chris Farren somehow pulls it off. In a paper that I wrote a few years back, I wrote about how to fully increase engagement with your brand on Twitter. And one of the main things was to create a relationship with your brand. Chris Farren does an amazing job creating a relationship with his fans on Twitter and really gives them someone to look up to. He gives them someone that to show them that you can be successful and you can be proud of yourself while still not being super proud and still having those doubts. In addition to this, he goes against most social media tactics, which makes him seem more down to earth and just straight up goofy. He uses Throwback Thursday to his own advantage. He uses the same exact picture multiple times. He tweets out his own name. This is something that companies normally wouldn't do. This man, his music, and love of his fans shows that the narcissism he portrays is for comedic effect. He knows how important or how prevalent narcissism is in our society right now, and because of that, it is seen that Chris Farren is extremely self-aware. Most of what he does to promote himself is outside of the norm, and him being able to do that is very important in the community that he is a part of. Chris Farren's identity online proves to people in the punk scene that are interested in him that even if they have self-doubt, they can still be proud of who they are and have fun with it. I've linked some of the stuff that I've talked about here in the description of this video. You can check out Marshall McLuhan's book if you're interested in that. I linked my essay that I wrote a while back, and I've linked Chris Farren's Bandcamp page. You can check him out wherever you want to check out music. Please support him because he's a great guy, and honestly, he deserves all the support that he can get. Thank you for listening, guys.